Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on the future of key account management brought to you by DemandFarm in partnership with SAMA, that is Strategic Account Management Association, an organization that's been around since 1964, servicing more than 20,000 members across 300 plus B2B enterprises. To introduce myself, I'm Abhijit Ganguly, co-founder and CEO at DemandFarm. We provide digital account planning solutions to B2B enterprises to help digitalize and institutionalize their CAM practices. To set the context, the B2B sales world has seen a significant change over the past few years. The buyer journey, as is the case in B2C, has largely become digital now. The buying process has become a lot more complex with a lot more stakeholders involved on the customer end when it comes to making purchase decisions. The pandemic, last but not the least, has completely disrupted the world in terms of hybrid working, virtual sales, virtual procurement, which has pretty much become the norm today, and seems to us that it's going to continue to be so for the foreseeable future. As key account management adapts to the fast-paced digital environment today, more than ever, there is a need to digitalize the CAM function and convert the art of high-performance selling into a science so that we have sustained repetitive results. To that extent, at DemandFarm, we recently conducted a survey where we spoke to over 1,000 sales leaders across global enterprises to understand what were the perspectives that they were capturing in terms of trends, skills, tools, and strategies that impact the future of CAM and its fast-changing landscape. I'm glad to announce that post this webinar today, we'll be releasing that report. And to discuss some of the insights that emerged out of that report, we have a very interesting panel of speakers that covers the breadth and depth of the key account management function. Let me start by introducing Harvey Dunham, Managing Director of SAMA. As I mentioned, founded in 1964, you've been around for over 58 years now. You have been a part of supporting CAM practitioners across 20,000 members and 300 plus organizations. Richard Dunn, a Senior Director, Global Account Management at DHL, a household name that we are all familiar with. DHL, of course, is one of the leading logistics companies in the world with over 380,000 people across 220 countries. And last but not the least, Andrew Hazard, Senior Director, GTM Enablement at Contentful, an exciting, fast-growing technology company that offers new age content management systems to power digital experiences. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of this forum. It's a pleasure to have you on board.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, let's jump into this right away. I'm going to start with Harvey. Harvey, I mean, given that SAMA has been working for so long with so many key account management, I'm going to use the word key account management and strategic account management interchangeably, if you don't mind. Over all these years, how have you seen the key account management function evolve with these changing, sales paradigms?
It's a great question, and of course, it continues to evolve. But it all started, and maybe I'll start first with a brief description of how SAMA got formed, because it was interesting in and of itself. Back in 1964. 8 chemical companies like Dow, DuPont, 3M, and other companies got together, and they had a problem that they needed to solve. And the problem was, at that time, the CEOs had their own customers and took care of their own customers. But as these companies got larger and their jobs got more complex and more global, et cetera, they just didn't have the bandwidth to take care of these customers anymore. So they sent their sales leaders to meet together to come up with a way to take care of their largest and most important customers. And they came up with this concept of having a strategic account manager to take care of the CEO's accounts. And I think that's really important because, when you think about where the money comes from in a company, it comes from the customers. And when you're talking about strategic accounts, they tend to be your largest and most important customers from a revenue perspective, from a profit perspective, whatever. So it's a very important place that this industry, if you will, strategic account management, key account management grew from. The most important changes, the most important evolutionary changes I've seen are that, first of all, that the SAM is becoming better enabled. And actually, the pandemic has helped that. We've seen a big acceleration in some SAM companies. I mean, there were literally CAMs managing some of the largest accounts in the world using Excel or PowerPoint. Those were the tools that they had. And, but, a lot of their customers are global in nature, and trying to keep a team informed around the world of what's going on, terribly difficult to do if you're not properly enabled. So that's been important. In terms of co-creating value, something else that's really changed is that digital again becomes very important. Now, people not only want the product or service that you provide, but they want information. They want real-time information. The customer wants it. The C-suite wants it. Your teams around the world want it. They want to be able to see how things are evolving, moving, shaping, and what they have to do to change. So that's been a very big change. And, again, I don't see that going anywhere but up. As we hear many companies, there's been more digitalization happen in the last 3 years than has happened in the last 20 or whatever. I've heard a lot of different statistics, but it's a big deal. And one last thing that I see is this change in the customer buyer journey. You alerted to it, obviously, in your opening remarks. It too is becoming more digital, but not totally digital. They're, real life human beings still have a very important role in this. But as this journey changes, there's a lot of adaptation that's happening. And it seems to me that it's happening in real time. We see the emergence of marketing joining SAM teams and really becoming a member of the SAM CAM or team, because they're better at the digital world. They understand that world and can see what the customer's doing better and what their industry's doing, and help the SAM sharpen their focus, because the customers want you to be on point. They don't want to have to explain what they're up to. They expect you to know what they're up to. And so those are, I would say, the three big things that I see that are standing out these days.
I think in that one answer, you covered 2 or 3 of my questions. So thank you so much. That was very helpful. Richard, I'm going to move over to you. I mean, do you have anything to add to what Harvey said?
I would agree completely with what Harvey has said. I would also add that maybe if I look at the last decade, I think account management used to be the poor sibling of business development and sales. It was often not as focused on, not recognized as a function. And I think over the last 5 years, it's become much more recognized, not only as a function in its own right, but a way of doing business. It's also becoming much more structured, much more data-driven, more focused on success measures than ever before. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think it's come from people understanding and organizations understanding the power of account management. We recognize that most of our growth comes from existing customers. And if you're not managing them well, someone else is.
Okay, thank you. Andrew, as a new age technology company, the way you look at account management, is that any different today, or?
I don't think the way we look at it is any different. I think the way we go about it is a lot different. We've always seen account management as being, as Richard, you just said, like, we get most of our business from recurring revenue of our current customer base. That's the whole name of SaaS, right? Land them and expand them. We see it the same way, but how we go about it is what's really changed over the years and accelerated, much like you said, Harvey, with the pandemic. There's been an accelerant that happened, and that accelerant largely happened in breaking down the silos of responsibility. Largely, a salesperson landed the account, a salesperson grew the account, and your account managers or your customer success managers, whatever function that exists, it changes everywhere, but they were really the maintainers of the account. Well, now all those roles have really become contributors to the growth. And that's an area where how we go about doing it internally and lining it up to that customer journey that you described, Harvey, is really what's changed. And it's changing fast. It's getting a lot more positive scrutiny in that, wow, we could do a lot here if we put some time into it.
Right.
Absolutely.
May I just add one quick point to what you just said, Andrew? I've been asking this question for over 40 years in my career, and asking SAMs in particular, who's your toughest customer? Your external customer, your internal customer? It's never changed. It's always been the same. And it's always been the internal customer that's tougher.
Nothing's changed.
So, yeah, nothing's changed, but it's changing and it's getting better.
Yeah.
And the stakes are higher, I would say, for everybody to work in unison together. So that's a big deal, a very important point.
In fact, one of the findings from the survey that we ran was that probably the most important thing today when it comes to strategic account management is collaboration and transparency among the internal teams. So you're absolutely right. I think that you hit the nail on the head. Let me move on to the next question, and this is to Richard. Richard, I think while, largely the business world has seen a lot of digital transformation, the logistics industry has made huge strides when it comes to digitalization, automation, and artificial intelligence. And as a company that has seen so much of technology interventions over the years, do you believe that puts you in a good spot when it comes to digital transformation of your sales processes or your key account management processes?
Yes, I do. I mean, I've been in this industry for 24 years, and I've seen more advancement in the areas you just mentioned in the last 5 to 6 than I have in the previous 18. And I think it does help. But for customer solutions, technological interventions or digitization is a well-defined and natural progression. I think it is less straightforward and more complex, I would say, when it comes to strategic account management. And I think some of that complexity can be attributed to I'd call it the well-established notion or debate whether sales is an art or a science. And I think people still wrestle with that in part. I think most people come to the view that it's a combination of both. But I believe, and at DHL, what we're focusing on is, the best sales or account teams are built by complementing natural talent with training and tools. And I also personally believe the needle is shifting more towards the science, and therefore the technological interventions are much more important. Managing information about customers, markets, and solutions is becoming more complex and more important. And definitely at DHL, I'd say that we recognize that the sales and account teams need digital solutions to help them manage this new pace of information and also assimilate that information into strategy and actions for our customers. I suppose in short, I'd say that they need help to hone in on the right insights and data points to help them manage and grow their accounts in a structured way. A quick example would be, we don't want to be giving our CAMs a selection of market reports and case studies and go figure it out. The alternative and the better way, and where we're heading, is let's have a system cross-reference that data with the customer, their strategy, historical information about interactions and solutions, and then present those relevant insights to the CAM so they can make better decisions. These are the kind of technological developments I think that will improve account management as a whole.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Richard. That was very, very insightful. Let me just, bounce this off Andrew. I think if you look at it, sales as a function has seen a rapid adoption of technology when it comes to sales intelligence, lead management, opportunity management, forecasting tools. But do you believe that strategic account management as a function has kind of lagged in terms of the digital transformation journey? And if yes, what could be the reasons for that?
The answer is yes, 100% yes. Some of it just deals with you need that moment in many ways, we talked about it already, that, this whole pandemic really could be that moment, that accelerating moment that happened. I think the other piece, though, to it that is important to understand is a lot of the digital transformation that happens in sales solves a now problem. And what I mean by that is intelligence gives me data now. Recording call intelligence gives me information that I could work on now while I'm doing something else. If you look at things like customer engagement platforms, they give me data now. Key account management is not about now. And I think that that's a big part of what happens is if a buyer of the software can't see the immediate need and you're balancing, hey, I need to procure this software or this software, a lot of the pressures to solve the now problem, because that's causing people issues, productivity issues, whereas key account management software is solving the future. What we do now doesn't actually give us a return today. That may not give us returns for, depending on what your payback cycle is, your expansion periods, you're looking at anywhere from 7 to 24, 36 months, just depending on what you're actually delivering to the market. And I really believe that that is what has driven that to this point. And so there wasn't the appetite to buy it. Now you've had this moment, this key accelerant moment that is changing things that we can't solve internally. You can't do it on spreadsheets for everybody to see. You can't tie those spreadsheets to other systems, other software, other key and performance metrics that are driving behavior in the customer journey with your internal teams. So now we're seeing that happen. But yeah, I think that is a very fair point.
And just as an extension to that, given the whole hybrid working environment, virtual sales, virtual procurement, do you feel that relationship selling, I personally believe that that's probably one of the biggest reasons why strategic account management kind of fell behind when it came to digital transformation, because it was essentially about walking the corridor, wining and dining, and building those relationships, which of course are important today. But do you feel that that's changing a little bit given this environment?
100%. I think that's all tied to this accelerating moment, right? You cannot walk into a building and meet someone in a city with the whole team, because their whole team could be spread throughout not just one country, but multiple countries, right? That in order to map the organization, and when I mean map, we could be literally talking about the account map, but we could also be talking about the influence map. We could be talking about the ownership map of projects. It requires something far more robust than my relationship with either one of you.
Correct.
And that is where, when we talk about breaking down silos, that's the multiple relationships at us, the vendor, connected to the multiple relationships and individuals at our customer. And I really believe that account management really defines itself in that way of, it's a relationship between our company and the customer, not Andrew and Harvey. Absolutely. And that is a change that is happening, and it's only going to happen more and more and more as we spend more time in this working environment. That's not going away.
I think that's a brilliant point you make. It's about the relationship between the company and the customer rather than an individual, and that's probably going to get accentuated going forward. Javi, let me just jump back to you. I think with the typical challenges that we are seeing with our customers today, in terms of institutionalizing best practices, retaining relationship intelligence, and cross-team collaboration, how is SAMA helping your member community tide these challenges today?
Yeah, it's just trying to stay current with how everything's changing and keep our community current on how things are changing. And we aren't experts in everything. We can't be experts in everything. We can't even try to be experts, but we have a lot of experts in our community. So by having the right experts and connecting people to them, it makes a big difference. And I think that sharing best practices, we have, when we talk about best practices, we have a couple of conferences, and they're always focused on best practice sharing. Webinars such as this, we do one a month. They're focused on best practice sharing. And, you know, informally, or well, it's actually quite formal internally, but anybody who's a SAMA member, if they would like to talk to someone who's another practitioner that we think is doing something that might be of interest and might be helpful to them, I mean, we'll go about the fact of making that connection and getting permission, of course, first from both parties that they do want to talk and they're not competitors or any of those kinds of problems, but actually putting you in touch with people that have recently solved the same problem that you're trying to attack. So these are ways that we do it. And then on a more formal basis, we created a certified strategic account manager training program about 5 years ago. And that's been very, very popular. It's about a 2-year journey for the CSAM participant to actually take all the required classes. And actually, then it's not enough to have taken the classes. This isn't a certificate of completion. This is a certification that says I have applied these concepts, and to the satisfaction of my boss and to the satisfaction of SAMA, we have actually demonstrated that we learned and we've changed our behavior and we're doing things differently than what we were doing before. So and there are 553 graduates. I checked actually as of today. There was it's a fresh number. And, you know, and it's growing. It's a very popular program. And, you know, when you think about 2 years of, if you will, sort of post-college work and doing this in real time while you're managing a strategic account, it's a big ask, but people are doing it because they want to have the latest and greatest skills, and the customers are demanding it. They need it. They want it. They expect it. So, you know, there are a number of other things that we're doing, podcasts, and to talk to individuals when we see something that's novel, unique, that will be helpful to the community. It's all about trying to keep all of us current and looking ahead, because it is changing. It's going to continue to change, and it's just important for us to be as helpful as we can be for our community.
Thanks, Avi. Thanks a lot. Let me change gears a little bit here and move on to a topic that's very dear to us at DemandFarm, and that is change management and adoption, because we hear this from almost everybody we talk to when we're trying to talk about digital accounts. Richard, I'll start with you. For a company of DHL size, I'm sure change management could be a huge challenge. How does the DHL strategic account management team specifically deal with change management when it comes to, you know, these kind of digital transformation demands on them?
You're absolutely right. It's a huge challenge, but like many organizations at DHL, like many large companies, we have a change management process, which provides us with a flight path, a consistent set of tools, if you will, to manage change. And in addition, we have a corporate-wide program of digitalization. So the digitalization of account management forms part of this larger program. So there's a structure in which we manage it, which kind of helps to a degree. But being a bit more specific, I'd say it's essential that we have a clear process that works before we look to digitize it. And we discussed earlier about the adoption of digital tools in account management. And I think for some parts, it's because certainly when I look at our organization, it's only really been the last few years we've come to define detail what is account management, how you should do it, and make it consistent, which is very difficult across a large global organization. And then often even in big organizations, you have a consistent process, but it can be quite common to have some variability in the regions and countries. And that's not always wrong, because it can be by design that it's the right thing to do. Ideally, in a digital world, a digital tool will be applied consistently everywhere, but it's not always feasible. And I think it's something that certainly in DHL we're very aware of. And the other point I would mention, which I think is important, is talking about cultural differences. although we apply tools in a very consistent way, and technological tools specifically, their adoption and their use can vary across different regions and countries. And I think it's important that in managing those programs, we appreciate those variations, which are critical to success. I suppose fundamentally what I'm saying is key account management cannot be managed in silos, but you can't also have one model that fits the entire organization for the reasons I've shared.
Absolutely makes sense. Andrew, how do you champion this whole cause of digital transformation in light of managing change?
Well, the good thing is I work for a digital transformation company at its core. So I don't have to do a lot of salesmanship internally in that regard. Much easier that way. I would say the reality is the transformation, the change management really just has to be tied to our underlying goals, right? If our underlying goals, whether they be revenue targets, customer relationship targets, retention targets, whatever we want to be, how are we attaching this implementation to those targets? And that really is the piece. Now, clarifying that is all the upfront work that takes some time. I mean, until we made the decision to go digital with our account management, we were doing the same thing everyone else was doing, the spreadsheets and everything else like that. And like I said, we had this catalyst moment, this moment of, wow, we could be doing this different. And really the reality struck when we started to do it. In a small company, testing matters. You test a little bit, you get some feedback, rapid experimentation. And we saw, wow, some of these relationships that we've brought more digitally have really not only given us insights, but helped us expand, grow, retain at a higher rate in a faster amount of time. So those early returns really said like, hey, why don't we go and do this more and standardize that? Part of that change then was breaking down those silos. Now we went from an organization of siloed teams where we do more of team selling, bringing different orgs across our customer facing roles together. And so that there becomes the force function by which the key account management is executed. That really allows champions to build amongst the crowd, as opposed to identifying 1, 2, and me and trying to like drop it all the way down. You're actually building it amongst the crowd. And then that's going to be the future, right? And we're learning together. We're building together. We're doing this together. And then as our company grows, being a smaller company without all those logistical problems that come with large companies, we could actually get away with doing that. And we could get away with process over perfection all day long, progress over perfection all day long until we get there. And that's what is allowing and is going to continue to allow that transformation to be successful.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you so much. Javi, and you probably answered this already in terms of, the kind of interactions and programs you have with your community, but do you have any programs that are specific to addressing change management at SAMA?
I would say it's implicit in the people that we invite to be speakers at our conferences and those kinds of things, because that, every good story starts with a problem, and every good problem is solved by changing something. You have to, you're encountering a problem that you often have never encountered before, and you have to go internally and get people to do this. So, when we look at the competencies, back to training SAMs, this ability to understand what the customer needs and to think strategically about it, and where is the customer trying to get to and how can I help them get there? That's really a core to this whole thing. And then the SAM's ability to then turn around and take this, once you get an agreement with the customer that this is where they want to go and how you help them, being able to turn around and explain that to your organization and the various different facets of your organization so that they know how to adjust and align themselves. These are very, very important skills. And, for transformation, the SAM has to be the leader. And what's really interesting, and this is pretty much true in every industry, is that the SAM also has no hierarchical authority internally. they have to do it by having the right facts, telling the right story, convincing people all along on what needs to be done, and you know, tying it back to the customer and tying it back to their own company. So I mean, it's a, you know, this is a very important leadership role, and yet they're not called leaders. Now, I predict that's going to change. I see that SAMs are, the bar is raising on the kind of experience you need to bring to the job, because you need to understand business, your customer's industry, your products, where your company's headed, strategy, even things that are tactical, pricing, how to deal with the supply chain issues that have hit. You know, the customer, you are the one point of contact. That is the real value, is you know, what I hear customers saying is, I don't want to deal with your complexity. I want to deal with you. You deal with your complexity. Give me the answers that I need. So that ability to get to answers and get to yes and get down back to the customer with the things that they need. The faster you can do that, the more accurate, and the more you can back it up and actually deliver. That's going to define whether you're going to be a customer, a strategic account of theirs for a long, long time, or you're going to be looking for another job.
Perfect, perfect. In fact, you know, just to share with you, I think one of the findings that did emerge out of this survey was that change management fears and training or lack of training and knowledge was accounted for almost 68% of the respondents stating why they were not ready for digital account planning today. So you know, we clearly see that as probably the biggest impediment to DemandFarm success. And you know, obviously that means that you work on UX, you work on, you know, how do you make the product more ubiquitous, in, you know, how do you make it more real life in the day-to-day performance of an account manager. I'm now going to move to a section that's probably the most exciting one, and that is the future of strategic account management. I'm going to start with Richard. So if you were given, you know, and I'm saying this only because I know that you have evaluated digital account planning tools. You know, if you were given a wish list of what did you really want the digital account planning solutions of the future to offer besides the functionalities that they typically tend to offer today, can you, you know, what would they be? I mean, can you give me a couple of options that come to your mind?
I have a long list for you, but I'll start with the first few and leave it there. One what I would call, and we touched on it a little bit at the start, I'd call it first level intelligent insights. The data's there, but we need to use it more wisely. So for example, I could ask Andrew about a customer X and the potential in this region. And if he had experience with them, he'd probably refer to the history, maybe consult some old data on his hard drive, look at some notes, share failed or successful projects, identify, you know, contracts with competitors, for example, all this sort of knowledge that typically sits with the account manager. But actually, that's all knowledge that often is or should be stored in a CRM or stored digitally. So all of those data points could be taken by some form of artificial intelligence or decision support system. And these first level intelligent insights would enable the key account manager to elevate themselves to the next level. So rather than using their time to pull all this together, they can use their time and brain power just to look at the summary data and also build on that, take it to the next level and make better decisions. That would be the first one. Maybe I'll add a quick second. And you know, that a tool should be, I'd use maybe fun to use. And that maybe sound a bit quirky, but you know yourself, and I think I might have heard it from yourselves, that tool adoption is directly proportional to the ease of use. But actually, if you can make a tool fun and you need to get 1,000 account managers or 5,000 account managers to use it, it has to be a pleasure to use. It has to give them something more than they've got today. And imagine something like a well-designed Apple product that becomes your account planning tool. It would be far easier to sell internally to account managers. So that one might be a bit of a big ask, fun to use, account planning tool, but you said ask, so I did.
No, I mean, I'm glad you actually raised these two, because quite honestly, these are things that, which are there pretty much on our roadmap, because one of the things that we keep thinking about, very similar to what you said, is that when you capture so much of information with regards to account plans and account performance, and when you're capturing that, let's say, across your portfolio of 100 accounts, why can't we cross-pollinate that information? Why can't we use AI to actually pull the insights from that and actually recommend an account plan to the account manager, rather than him sitting and spending hours and hours gathering data and creating it on an Excel sheet? So absolutely bang on. And of course, the other thing is UX, which is which kind of takes care of all the things in terms of, can we gamify it? Can we make it more fun to use? Can we make it more interactive? But let me not kind of speak more. I mean, I'm going to move over to Andrew. Andrew, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I'm going to tell you, mine aren't going to sound too much different than Richard, other than Richard, thank you for that UX pitch. I love it, because I think that is, I mean, we don't talk about it enough, yet we talk about it all the time. I cannot say that enough. I'm going to lean into one of Richard's, and then I'm going to add another one. I am going to lean into what Richard said at the beginning, is that AI, that artificial intelligence, that how do you bring all that information seamlessly into one centralized place? And here's the important thing. There's a lot of tools. I work in enablement. We're procuring tools all day long that we talked about at the beginning. But the reality is we want to make it so our individual contributors, our reps, don't have to spend time logging into all of those tools all day long. I really see key account management software as being a centralizing hub that sits and lives within your CRM, for lack of a better term. That's your data repository. This lives off your data repository, but in the future, I love it where that all that information just feeds right into account. And then the AI part of it is really, and this is something I'm passionate about, is how do we make it so we know our accounts better than our accounts know their accounts? And this is a really interesting way that could happen, is surfacing those insights into account management software that says like, hey, here's something that's happening at DHL. Richard, did you know that Fred over here at DHL is doing X, Y, and Z? And he probably doesn't, because DHL is so massive. Yet for us, servicing DHL as a customer, it's important that we have that entire coverage. And so then reducing that homework, reducing that research, reducing all that, and just taking all these other tools that do it all for you and funneling it into one place in an elegant way, meaning it's not just a bunch of data sheets all over the place, but in an elegant way, really reduces a massive friction problem of too many tools. And to Richard's point, tool adoption, he talked about ease of use. Another friction point to tool adoption is too many tools. If you have too many things, you got nothing. And this is where I see, in my mind, like where I love to see things going. And if we can do those things, holy cow, you want to talk about like force multipliers that happen across an organization. This is one that I truly believe is, and it's there, it's at the table. It's about just things happening. So that's my addition to it.
Excellent. Javi, I'm going to ask this one. I mean, I'll start with you. How do you see the future of key account management evolving in terms of people, process, as well as technology? I mean, if you were to basically prioritize one of these three, and all of the above is not an answer, what do you think is probably the most important in terms of where companies should be focusing on today with regard to the strategic account management functions?
Well, I think, empowering the SAM with the information that they need, that's relevant to the customer, and all of the things that you gentlemen have just been talking about, both of you, Richard and Andrew, it's so important. And, you know, there was one of the best models I've seen actually came from IBM. I interviewed this gentleman the other day that was on a podcast, and he was the managing director, was the term that they use for a strategic account manager or a key account manager, managing director for Citigroup globally. He had P&L responsibility. He had his own financial controller. He had some other people that were supporting him. Increasingly, we start to see people like marketing and other strategy people joining these teams to be able to help the SAM help the customer. And when you help the customer and the customer sees what you're doing for them, what do? They give you more business. They give you more problems to solve. They give you, and so, you know, feeding this cycle so that you really have the information at your fingertips is a great way to go. And I see more of that happening. So empowering the SAM and, you know, teaching them how to manage the P&L, these kinds of things, and giving them the support they need too, because every P&L manager needs a good finance person to push back on them, because especially for salespeople, we've always got a story for why we need to do this, that, or the other thing. You need a little reality therapy too, but that making this a team and making that customer feel like I am your customer. You are the most important thing to me. I'm not distracted by 17,000 other different things. If I need information, to your point, I know where to go get it. This is what the customers want. Answers.
Thank you, Avi. Thank you. Richard, binary answer, people, process, or technology?
As in picking one, would you say?
Yeah. I mean, we are short of time, so I'm going to cut this short a little.
Yeah, I mean, I struggle, I think, to pick one, because we're focusing on all three, but I think there's an order, right? Processes need to be developed first. Don't bring in technology until you know what it's going to do. Then it should be optimized by technology and delivered by well-trained people. So I must pick all three, but in that order, if that's okay.
Okay, I'll grant you that, because that makes a lot of sense. So
very kind.
Andy, do you have any further comments on that one?
Oh, you got to catch me on the day. I'm going to go with process, because if you have everything in place, the other two, the type of people who you hire, what their skill sets, how you train them, where you develop them, is all based off of that process. And then technology as well. Technology should fill gaps and solve problems, not just be there. So.
Excellent. Okay. I did have a lot more that I'd have wanted to kind of, talk about. I think this has been a very, very interesting conversation. Thank you so much. But to summarize, I think, and there seems to be a fair amount of commonality in what all three of you said, and also what we at DemandFarm are seeing. The future of digital account planning or digital key account management seems to hinge on four factors the way I see it. One is use of data and analytics to drive decisions, insights, and interventions so that you can effectively manage these accounts. Improved collaboration, transparency across teams, and as Javi rightly mentioned, empowering the strategic account manager to practically run it like his business, where he has the support of all the necessary functions to deliver value to the customer. And while the use of technology to automate the processes is a given, I think the next level is all about how do you make the product or the platform user-friendly? How do you make it fun to use? How do you make it more ubiquitous? How do you manage change? And essentially make it a platform that people can use every day without really feeling burdened as in terms of actually having to log into multiple systems, like Andrew mentioned. Gentlemen, thank you so much. This has been an extremely insightful session for me. I'm sure our viewers will enjoy watching this as much. It's been a pleasure having you on this platform. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you,
It's been a
guys.
great conversation.
Thank you.
Pleasure, guys.
Really appreciate it.